Hey Void, how you all doing? Alrighty. So, in my bad movie birthday binge, I did watch another movie. Now, this one, a few other reviewers had talked about. Someone saying that it was an enjoyable bad movie that they did enjoy watching every once in a while. So it's like, I found it, I think, for $1 or so at one of the used places. So I picked it up, decided to give it a shot. See if, uh, see if it scratched that itch. And, well, I can't say I was bored by this one. Winter's Tale. 2014, starring Colin Farrell, Jessica Brown Finlay, and a very scene-chewingly delightful Russell Crowe. And this movie is kind of a mess, but it's a fun mess. It really is. So, the movie takes place in, I believe, 1915 primarily, and it centers around a young burglar named Peter Lake, who's just kind of on the outs with his old boss, who seems to be some sort of demon. Uh, but mostly he doesn't know that. He's just worried about his boss coming after him for revenge. So, after meeting a magic horse, that might be a dog, uh, that saves him from the lynch mob that's after him, he ends up going on a bit more burglary before intending to get out of the city. But when he slips into a rich-looking mansion to rob the place, he finds a young woman who is left behind, young Beverly Penn, who's dying of consumption. So, instead of robbing her, they have a nice chat, and he falls completely head over heels for her. And after he learns his old boss is now after her, he he and his magic horse try to save her, and end up going to pretty much a lake house with her and her family, and he proceeds to try to win her heart before she dies, which is coming up soon, apparently. So, however, Russell Crowe is so sure that, well, the mythology of the movie is everyone has a miracle, and when you find the person you give that miracle to, you can change anything, and Russell Crowe is very anti-miracle, so he's determined to stop him from saving her life by speeding up her death. And I don't know what counts as a spoiler for this movie, so I'm just gonna say right off here, the movie's a hot mess, but it is hypnotic and enthralling. I was glued to this thing. I wanted to know where this was going with a lot of it because it's out there. It's very surreal. The movie's like a fever dream. I'm giving this one a good 6 out of 10. It's above average. Not great. Didn't really get up to the greatness, but definitely above average. And I highly recommend actually checking this one out. Almost gave this one a 7. I was getting pretty close there. Okay, so spoiler territory. Yeah, she dies. And surprisingly, or semi surprisingly, there's no immediate resurrection. Then we jump to 2014, where he's still hanging around after supposedly dying, and now trying to figure out who he was, why he's here, and what his purpose is. Okay. Uh, sure. And from there on, he goes about saving another life, if he can, because Russell Crowe is still in the game and wanting to make sure his old accomplice doesn't succeed. Now, some things don't quite make sense because there was a little girl that he knew when in the first time period, maybe like between 6 to 10, and she's still around in 2014, which would put her at about at least 105 to 120 years old, somewhere in there. So that's kind of weird. I think the problem was the movie was this. This is based on the book. The book was set in that was probably set when it came out, circa 1983, which would put her in her late 70s, early 80s, which makes much more sense. So it seems like they just didn't account for what would happen if you advance the movie by about 30 years. So, oops. But at the same time, that's hardly the something to take you out of this movie because everything else is already so out there. It's just like, sure, why not? I mean, around the corner and something he's on a Colin Farrell's on a white horse. Because why isn't he on a white horse that flies? Sure. This movie is ridiculous, and Russell Crowe is devouring some very expensive looking scenery. He is having a time. And there's a surprise Will Smith in this movie, being as charming as Will Smith always is. So, the movie's weird. It's a mess. But I will say the romantic leads did have some good chemistry. I was on board with their relationship. I wanted to see them overcome death and get together. I was with that. I was on board for that. And even though things don't quite work out, it still works out to be a very sweet movie overall. It's it's a feel good romance that romantic fantasy realism. You don't overthink it. Don't take it too seriously. And it's a fun movie. I'd gladly watch this one again. It's a decent romance and a weird fantasy, but it's a weird fantasy that works. So, Winter's Tale, not to be confused with the Shakespearean in A Winter's Tale or The Winter's Tale. I can't remember what that one is, but just plain Winter's Tale, 2014. Check it out. It's worth seeing. It's baffling and confused a little bit, and definitely a little more complicated than it has to be. But that's kind of just where the enthrallingness comes in. So, yeah, check it out. All right, that's probably my last one for tonight. I've just did a big drop of movies, so I can actually now get back to watching things, so I can get back to posting things, and the cycle will continue ad nauseum. All right, so have a good night, everybody.